this next TFA Tuesday, let me tell you, Carlos Salazar, who is the owner and CEO of TFA Tax, is going to go through why a corporation may not make sense, why a corporation may make sense, what's an S Corp, what's a C Corp, what's an LLC, why you might want to do business in a sole proprietorship. I know you're going to enjoy the video that you're about to pay attention to. Hit that subscribe button so that you can be in on all the other stuff that we got going on.
And to give you a little bit of a background for those of you that don't know me, Carlos Salazar, I worked with the government for 13 years as an auditor. I was a tax auditor with the Franchise Tax Board doing federal and state audits. Did that for 13 years and basically got tired of it. And I decided I wanted to go on my own and be a business owner just like you guys. You know, 15 years ago during the other recession, started knocking on people's doors, trying to get customers and clients, you know, and what we're doing out there is just planting seeds, right? Trying to get customers. And here we are, you know, 15 years later, we have several offices, we have a lot of employees, and our focus as a firm at TFA Tax is we help you guys with everything involving business taxation, okay? Accounting, tax accounting, tax returns for your business, for your personal accounts. Right now, we're super busy consulting and guiding people with payroll issues, PPP, EIDL, SBA, all these acronyms, you know, and we're just really busy with that. And so today I'm really, really excited to share some information with you guys, stuff that I've learned over 26, 27 years doing this. And, you know, you pretty much, after a while, because of repetition, you start figuring out how things should be. You know, everybody's trying to sell, you know, people things they don't need. And sometimes people are very confused, and you try to go on LegalZoom and try to set up your own entity because you're trying to save $1 or $2. But, you know, after having gone through the whole process, and we deal with this every day, we know for a fact that it's not possible for somebody who's never done an entity or set up an entity to do it right from A to Z by logging in and creating an account with LegalZoom or, you know, or these other online portals. So I'm here to basically talk about 3 types of entities that we have found to be the most popular ones, and that may pertain to you as well. Okay, depending on your circumstances. And we're going to talk about C corporations, for example, LLCs, which are limited liability companies. And the third one is going to be corporations, S corporations, the more popular type of entity, the entity of choice. And each entity has pluses and minuses, pros and cons, like everything else in life. And before making a decision about the type of entity that's going to benefit you from a tax perspective, because again, as a CPA, my job is to focus on structure and tax. That's our focus and specialty, where you need to sit down with somebody that understands the taxation of these things. Otherwise, you set up an LLC like many people do on LegalZoom, and it turns out that it wasn't the right entity for you, for your business. And so, you know, we do with a lot of cleanup work as well in that process. So ultimately, we service everybody from manufacturing to real estate agents, investment advisors, anybody who's a Schedule C, sole proprietorship, people who are truckers, people who, you know, have restaurants. If you work independently and you're not on payroll and you're getting a 1099, or you're receiving cash, you want to consider incorporating because it offers many, many benefits. So let me kind of get started with it. I'm going to put a couple of examples for you shortly, but let me give you a startup by saying that a corporation is a legal entity, is a legal person. Okay, it has its own name. It has its own tax ID number, which is like a social security number, but for the company. It has its own bank account. It files its own tax returns. It has its own credit score. It's a legal person. It has all the rights of a legal person, except it's not a moral person. It's not a physical person. It doesn't have feelings. And basically, it's just a book, a binder with a bunch of paper in it, but it's respected as a legal person. And you, as a creator, happen to be the parent, the father, or the mother of that legal person. So it's kind of like having a minor, right? Where you exercise all control over the minor, all decisions for the minor. But then it's also like having somebody who's an adult as a child, because if something happens, that's wrong, or some legal issue happens, then it's likely that you won't be responsible, that the entity, that child is responsible for it. So you're getting the best of both worlds. It's kind of like having a kid where you can still control him, but then if something goes wrong, he's on his own. So that's one of the benefits of being incorporated when you're dealing with a separate legal person. So my experience has been that being in business is very risky. And so you really don't want to put things under your name. I really don't see what the benefit is of putting something under your name, exposing yourself personally to all these risks, right? Like, from audits, governmental audits, problems with legalities, customers. The minute you're in business, you're dealing with problems. We all know that. So why would I want to expose myself and put myself at risk? Everything I worked so hard for, why would I leave it under my name? So basically, if you set up an entity, we have the state of California, because we're all California residents, I assume. If you're in another state, then you could go to your local Secretary of State and then set up an entity there, or come to us and we'll help you, of course. But all corporations or entities are born in the Secretary of State office of the state in which you live in. And when we go there, it's basically like a hospital, but for corporations, right? So I come home with a baby, my little corporation. I give him a name. We have a tax ID number. He has a bank account, and I'm the parent, and I control that entity. And California says, look, if you want a corporation in my state, you got to give me $800 a year. If you give me $800 a year, I'll offer you some protection, legal protection. It's almost like a mafia fee. You pay me $800, I offer protection. Protection, any type of issue you have, including for myself. I won't bother you as much, I think, if you pay me my $800 a year. So it's kind of like a quota, an annual quota. I kind of look at things that way. Let's be practical and let's be realistic as well. So you agree, right? You say, okay, I'll set up a corporation with you. I'll pay you your $800 a year, and I want to benefit off these protections. But then the next question is going to be, what kind of entity do I set up? Oh my God, I don't even know where to begin. I have C corporations, S corporations, LLCs. My friends tell me this, my other friends tell me that. What do I do? Well, that's typically where we tell somebody to go to an attorney or go to an experienced CPA that understands the differences. There's many reasons why you want to set up an entity. Our focus is taxation and helping you save money. Okay, that's our focus. There's other incidental benefits, which involve, again, legalities. And you could talk to a business attorney and he'll be able to explain to you how you're protected. But for the most part, generally speaking, we've seen corporations protect shareholders. So then the first type of entity that we want to talk about is what's called a C corporation. All corporations are born as C corporations. Okay, all of them. So when I go to the hospital, I get my corporation, then I have a little baby, he's a C corporation. I need to make a special election to convert him into an S corporation. But generally speaking, he's a C corporation. C corporations are generally large companies that have over 100 shareholders, companies that are publicly traded, companies that are too big. Hopefully someday everybody here is going to be a C corporation, right? Because we're going to grow our businesses with over 100 shareholders. We're going to make some money. But for now, it's not typically an entity of choice because we're small. We basically need business corporations. But the reason I'm not a big fan of C corporations is because there's double taxation on a C corporation. So let me see if I could go ahead and share a screen with you guys on a C corporation. Okay, so are you guys able to see this? Okay, great. So you see this is a C corporation here, and you're able to see that this is a corporation with the blue box, and this is my personal account. I'm an investor with the business. I have two relationships with my corporation. On the one end, I'm an employee of my corporation, and on the other end, I'm an investor of my corporation. So I'm going to deposit all my money into the corporate account, and I'm going to spend my money from the corporate account for any business related activities. Then I need to pull money out of this company for myself, right? So I'm going to pull out payroll, employee payroll, a W-2 with withholdings, because I'm an employee of the business. I'm a director and I'm an officer, which is a president, VP, secretary, treasurer, which, by the way, one person can have all titles in the same company. And I need to pull out money from my corporation so I could cover my personal expenses like home, insurance, medical expenses, vacations, utilities, groceries, and that type of stuff. So I need to pull out payroll for my business, and I determine how much payroll I'm going to pay myself. If I'm worth 20 bucks an hour, then I'm going to pay payroll taxes based on 20 bucks an hour. If I'm worth 300 bucks an hour, then I'm going to pay a lot of payroll taxes. So you have the discretion to pay yourself what is considered a reasonable compensation. Then you're probably going to determine that you're probably worth 15 bucks an hour once you see the tax bill. And then you're going to say, well, no, but I need more money. I can't survive on $2,000 a month. How do I pull the money out from my corporation to my personal account? Well, you could use the investor door. Those are called distributions, and those are called dividends when you have a C corporation. And those monies are at the end of the year are reported on a 1099 to you. So the worst part about being a C corporation, quite honestly, is that you're subject to double taxation. You pay taxes at the corporate level at a rate of 21% to the IRS and 8.84% to California. And then when you pull out your distributions, you got to report those on your personal tax returns. There's double taxation. Talk about taking a step towards poverty. So it's very, very bad to set up a C corporation if you are not interested in paying double tax. Okay, that in a nutshell is a C corporation for you. Okay, so let me tell you, first benefit, limited liability, right here. We got that line right here saying something happens here, it stays here. We're not going to be bothered with this issue. Second benefit, you could actually add fictitious business names, DBAs, under one corporation. You could add a cleaning business, a taco shop, a real estate a business. You could add many businesses under one corporation. That's fine. And you only pay $800 a year for the entire amount as a minimum tax. At the end of the year, the corporation files a tax return with the IRS in California. And then at the end of the year, of course, it's going to issue you a W-2 and a 1099 for the dividends that you receive. So you're going to pay double tax. I hope that makes sense. You pay taxes on your profits at the corporate level. And then when you pull those profits back out, because you're going to need them personally, you're going to pay taxes on those again. Big no-no. I don't like that. I get clients very upset when I tell them, some people come in with C corporations and I explain to them how much they've been paying and they're not happy. Quite honestly, when we get somebody with a C corporation, they've been paying taxes here, but they haven't pulled out money through this door here. And they have a mega bomb of accumulated earnings on paper here that the government is just waiting to double tax. Very scary. So this is a very scary page right here. I know this is more relevant to Halloween or something, but we want to get away from the C corporations, okay? We don't want to be a C corporation, generally speaking. Of course, I can't paint everybody with a brush. There's case by case. There are circumstances where the C corporation makes sense, but generally speaking for our clients, it doesn't make sense. So that's a C corporation. How do I get away from this entity? I don't want to be a C corporation. How do I become an S corporation? Is it very complicated to be an S corporation? Not at all. An S corporation basically requires you to sign a form where all the shareholders consent, to that form and you fax it over to the IRS. And typically within about a month and a half to 2 months, you get a letter from the IRS saying, thank you very much. We've accepted your S corporation election back to the date that you requested, which typically they allow us a little bit over 3 years to go back and retroactively convert our C corporation into an S corporation. So we're in the business of doing a lot of conversions in our business at the TAX. So most people don't want to, leave their entities as C corporations, so we convert them into S corporations. So let me explain how an S corporation works. And again, I do apologize because, obviously we don't have a whole lot of time, and, I'm just giving you like the summary of how these things work. And obviously at the end of the day, give us a call and we'll explain things on a personalized basis, right? But right now, I think this is a good diagram that shows you how things flow. If I'm an S corporation, I deposit monies in my company, I spend money from there, I'm an employee of my business, and I'm also an investor. As an employee, I pull out payroll, again, at a reasonable compensation. And I also pull out distributions because remember, through the investor door, I'm able to pull out transfers of money via check, ATM, or internet from the corporation to my personal account without paying taxes on those distributions. So let me get this straight so we all understand. The S corporation does not pay taxes to the IRS. Okay, an S corporation does not pay taxes to the IRS. The S corporation pays California 1.5% of the profit only. Remember, the C corporation was at 8.84. This is only at 1.5%. At the end of the year, the corporation is going to give me a W-2 because I'm pulling out payroll from my corporation. And it's going to give me a K-1. Many of you have perhaps heard of the K-1, which is a form that we use to report our profits. And at the end of the year, I have to report that K-1 on my personal tax returns. So the beautiful part of this is that the corporation does not pay anything to the IRS. California only charges you a minimum of $800 and a maximum of 1.5% of your profit. And you're going to get a W-2 from the business, and you're going to get a K-1 from your corporation. So at the end of the year, you end up reporting everything on your personal account. So that's exactly how an S corporation works. There's one layer of taxation, not two. Remember, with the C corporation, you were paying taxes at the corporate level. And again, when you distribute the monies to your personal account, you were paying taxes on that again. Here with an S corporation, you only pay a single level of taxation. That's at the personal level. Okay, great entity, the most popular one for us. Okay, so this is the S corporation, the small business corporation. And the third type of entity, which before I get to that, let me explain why it is I don't want to be a sole proprietorship, is a sole proprietorship pays what's called a self-employment tax. That's at 15.3% of the profits. So you know what happens when you're paying 15.3% tax on your profits? Typically, you start putting pressure on your tax preparer to start coming up with expenses. I don't want that pressure. I don't want to start inventing expenses, making up expenses. I don't want the IRS coming in after us. The IRS loves auditing Schedule C sole proprietorships. So here with an S corporation, again, you're not paying that 15.3% tax any longer on your profits. You're only paying it on the amount you determine to be payroll, because that is a payroll tax. A self-employment tax, for those of you that don't know, is a payroll tax. So you guys have been paying payroll taxes, but you haven't been paying unemployment or disability for state purposes, but you've been paying the federal government. So if you ever want to look at your history with Social Security, you're going to find that all of your self-employment taxes have been credited to you. But typically, if you worked your 10 years, you probably don't need to continue contributing at the same rate towards Social Security. So take advantage of paying yourself and having these social benefits like unemployment and disability, as a lot of our clients are actually applying for unemployment benefits because they've been on payroll. So That's the way an S corporation works. And I know I'm rushing, and of course, we'll be available to answer questions. But last but not least, an LLC. Here we go. So an LLC, we get a lot of people come to us, and they set up an LLC on LegalZoom, and then come tax time, they're very disappointed because they still pay the same amount of taxes that they were paying as a sole proprietorship. Guess what? You pay the same amount of tax as a sole proprietorship, 15.3% self-employment tax. There is no tax benefit for being an LLC if you're a business. If you have a business where you're providing services, where you're managing people, where you're selling, where you're doing real estate, or you have a manufacturing, or you're a trucker, there is no tax benefit for you being an LLC because you're going to pay the self-employment tax just as the time you used to pay that when you were a sole proprietorship. An LLC is what's considered a chameleon entity because you're able to convert it into any type of entity you wish. You could elect to have an LLC be taxed as an S corporation. So if you made the mistake of setting up an LLC, we could always make a late S corporation election to convert you into S status and save money so you're not paying that 15.3% tax on your profits. So typically, we advise clients to set up LLCs, limited liability companies, for when you have property investments, because we find that the government offers us certain benefits if we're property investors. And by property investors, I'm not talking about putting your house where you reside in an LLC, because you can't do that. Your house is not an investment by definitional purposes. So I know we probably have a lot of real estate agents, and you go out there and tell your clients, no, your house is the best investment you could have. It is an investment from that degree, but not as an economic investment from the standpoint of the traditional definition. An investment is more of a duplex, a fourplex, a commercial property that you own, a lot perhaps where you're renting the space to truckers. If you own any type of commercial real estate or any type of property that's generating rental income for you, then we typically recommend that you that you contribute your assets into a limited liability company. Now, why is that? Well, as a starting point, you're not going to pay 15.3% tax on those profits from those rental profits, because that's considered passive income. It's not active income. You're not actually working to generate that income the way you would if you had a business and you set up an LLC. Here, it's passive income. These are residual incomes, just like rents, interest, dividends, and so forth. So these are not subject to the 15.3% tax. So great news right there from a tax standpoint. Number one. Number two is, typically if you have an asset that has a lot of debt attached to it, like a mortgage, like a property, then what you want is to get credit for that debt as if it was your contribution to the business. So I know I probably sound like I spoke Chinese right now. People don't understand what I'm talking about, but let me take a step back and explain something here. If I have a property, it's worth $1 million. I owe $800,000 on my mortgage, and I contribute that property to a corporation, I'm only going to get credit for $200,000, which is my equity. So I'm getting credit for $200,000 that I put into the business. I didn't put $1 million because remember, there's an $800,000 debt. So the government would allow me to pull out $200,000 if I'm an S corporation without paying taxes. That was my money. I put 200 grand in equity in the property. I'm able to get that money back out without paying taxes as a distribution. If I was to put that same property into an LLC, the government says, not only will I allow you the $200,000 equity, I'm also going to credit you for the $800,000 mortgage as if you put that money in. Because realistically, you're on the hook for that debt. I'm the guarantor of that money, of that mortgage. I borrowed money personally to be able to, I put my assets at risk. I'm contributing that asset into this LLC, and I'm getting $1 million of credit as capital. So that means I'm able to pull out $1 million of distributions without paying taxes. That's a wonderful tool to have. So if I have a property that has a high mortgage attached to it, of course, it's more beneficial for me to put the entire asset with the mortgage into the LLC so I get more credit as capital. I'm able to pull more money out in the future as a distribution without paying taxes. That's a very, very good thing. And the other benefit, of course, I'm all about, when it comes to reporting, lack of transparency. I'm not a believer in opening up my books for the world. I think it's very important that we maintain privacy wherever we can, because we're dealing with money, and I happen to believe that people want money, and the governments want money, and everybody wants money. And so all the energies of the universe with money are that we have a lot of bad characters looking in and trying to get to us to touch that money. So why would I have a house with no curtains, or blinds? I need to make sure that I protect my money. And that's one of the other reasons why I would set up a limited liability company, an LLC, as a partnership, for example, not necessarily a single member LLC. You can always set up a partnership between you and your corporation, you and your wife or your husband, you or your friends. And, of course, it's not about just setting it up because everybody's excited and you just feel like being partners. There's legalities involved in making such a decision, but nevertheless, the objective here is to always maintain less transparency when it comes to your money. Protect it. And so I'm a big fan of separating things out. At the end of the year, the LLC does not pay the IRS any taxes. Okay, the IRS does not tax you. California is going to tax you a minimum of $800. Remember that mafia fee we were talking about? I hope my friends at the government aren't listening right now. They're going to say, gosh, Carlos, you really turned on us. It's okay. They know. If they're listening, hello. It's the way it is. We got $800 you pay as an annual minimum. And the state of California also charges you a gross receipts tax depending on how much gross income you have besides the $800. So yeah, you're going to have to file a separate entity. You're only going to flow through a K-1 to yourself from your LLC. So you're able to report the profits. It's just a bottom line number that says this is how much money you generated and pay tax on that. It's a passive income. And it's a beautiful thing because there is no transparency, less audit risk. You look sophisticated to a bank. A banker who wants to lend you money is going to look at the structure and you're showing that, there's sophistication in your structure. You don't want to just walk in there with a Schedule C or a Schedule E. You want to show that, you have there's a design of how your money is flowing. And that's really what you want to show. Obviously, the more complex it looks, sometimes the less audit risk you're going to have. The IRS doesn't like to go out and audit a lot of complex returns. They typically like to smack around a lot of the little people who don't have receipts and under Schedule C. So I'm a big fan of setting up LLCs for real estate investments, a huge fan for setting up S corporations for your businesses, and, an okay fan of C corporations, especially if, of course, if you have over 100 shareholders, you have to set up a C corporation. You don't have any way around that. So a lot of people ask me, what if I don't have a social security number? Or what if my friend doesn't have a social security number? Can he be an owner of a corporation or an LLC or an S corporation? Absolutely. Absolutely. As long as you reside in this country for over half of the year, you're able to be a shareholder in an S corporation, even if you don't have a social security number. All you need is an ITIN number. For those of you that know people who don't have a social security number, you could actually set up an entity legally. Everything I tell you is legal here, okay? That's very, very important. The financial architects have been wonderful to us and our clients, and I'm not here to share any information that's illegal. Everything is properly vetted, and it's not worth it to any of us, right?
That's right. Thank you, Carlos. We appreciate that.
No
So,
problem. And
hey,
I know.
we're going to jump into some questions. And, I just have to tell you, I just like you more and more every time that I speak with you. I like all these, strategies that you're sharing to just help protect our money and not have to pay as much in taxes or get double taxed. And so it's just been really great information. So I'm going to jump us into some of the questions that we've had here in the chat box. But, just for everyone on the call, just, we do have these every Tuesday. So for some reason you want more information and again, you can't help but reach out, you're welcome to jump on these every Tuesday and just get more informed. So again, you can have better control over your finances. So Carl Lehman sent a question. He says, do you set up self-directed IRAs with checkbook control?
We don't personally set self-directed IRAs. Typically, we work with, investment advisors like you and brokerage houses that set them up, right? And of course, we work together as a team because ultimately we need to make sure that from a tax standpoint, we're successfully deferring some of those taxes that you're generating, the profits that you're generating from the entity. We do have clients that set up self-directed IRAs and they do very well with the tax deferrals, but we work in conjunction with the investment advisors.
Okay, awesome. I know Jaime asked virtual entity. So can a corporation be a virtual entity?
What do you mean by a virtual entity? That's a good question.
I mean, I don't know if you want to expand on that in the chat box, and I can.
Yeah.
I was just at the beginning of the speech when he was talking about you can set up a company with its own name and social security and so on and so forth. But
Yes.
it wasn't a direct question or anything. So.
Oh, I see. Which leads me to a very important point. A lot of people ask, well, what difference is there if I set up a company, for example, in Nevada, and I read about all these things, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, and so I tell people, look, if you're a California resident, you're taxed on worldwide income. I don't care if it's coming from China, Mars, Alaska, you're going to pay taxes on worldwide income here. If you're a US resident, you're going to pay taxes on worldwide income as well. So the only way, you're not really going to benefit by setting up an entity in another state, unless you're doing business in that state, and you have activities there, then you can start allocating things between that state and California. But if all your activities here in California, we're all screwed. We need to report everything here. Okay.
Deepak is asking, do you recommend a separate LLC for every investment property?
Great question. I always tell people LLCs and corporations are kind of like selling alarm systems, right? If I call ADT and they're going to tell me, look, this is what we offer you. I could offer you a $19.99 box on your wall where you key in your password and it, and with some stickers on your windows, that's a $19.99 package per month. I could go as much as spending $100 grand a month with some towers outside my house, some barbed wire, and some people with rifles on some towers with some watchdogs. It's a matter of protection. If you have, for example, 5 7-Elevens, I would say, and they're, I wouldn't want to put all 7-Elevens in one entity, because if that's the case, if something happens, if I put too many eggs in one basket and the basket falls, they all crack. So if I have maybe 2 or 3 duplexes, it's probably not as risky as it would be to have a commercial property like a 7-Eleven or a Circle K or something like that. Then I would actually say, I would probably, do with one LLC. It's okay. So a lot of it is on a case-by-case basis. And that's why we need to talk how much equity you have in your property and the level of risk, so that we would come up with the right plan the way an ADT alarm installer would, But corporations are protections and entities. So it's on a case-by-case basis.
Awesome. Okay, great. And then last question for you, Carlos. Could you elaborate on double taxation via C corporation from Edwin?
Absolutely. So what happens with a corporation, and I'm going to go ahead and share that screen again, okay? So let's go to the C corporation there. A C corporation pays a tax on the profits at the corporate level, right up here. The tax is at a rate of 21% as of 2018 and 8.84% for California purposes. So you're paying about 30% tax at the corporate level. And then when I distribute my profits to myself, I'm going to need to pull money out to sustain myself. I pay taxes on those distributions again. See, so let's kind of think of Apple Computer. Apple pays taxes at the corporate level, and then Apple on a quarterly basis gives distributions to all of its shareholders. Okay, those are called dividends when you have a C corporation, and then we pay taxes on those dividends come tax time, right? So there's a double taxation for every dollar of profit that I'm generating. I got to pay taxes at the C corporation level and again at the personal level. So that's where the double taxation takes place with a C corporation.
Awesome. All right, great. So thank you.
You guys are amazing. In 40 minutes, everybody understood everything I said. I hope I didn't confuse you guys, but this is being recorded, right, Natalie?
It is. It's being recorded, so hopefully we'll be able to get it out on Facebook for everyone to rewatch. But really great information. And Carlos, I love that you really keep it simple. I love the visuals. I know I learned a ton. And Emmanuel, that could be on our next one.
Cool.
We're running out of time, but we will definitely have more for you for sure.
Sorry, Manny, because Manny loves to talk. Sorry, Manny.
Yes.
All yours.
And clearly you're on fire, Carlos, because the chat's blowing up about how awesome you are. So
that's so cool. Great. I paid everybody $1, by the way, for that. After the quarantine, yeah. Thanks.
Yes. Okay, great. So good. So thank you so much. So we're going to go ahead and move into our next speaker, and that's going to be Manny Soto, CEO of the Financial Architects. And, I've had the pleasure of working with him for 2 decades now, not that we're revealing our age, but, one of the things that I really appreciate about him the most is his heart for not only educating people and making a difference in this area, but, and obviously providing all the information and collaborating so that can be helped in our finances full circle. But the reality is that when it comes to financial planning and insurance, these are all tools, right? And so it's just really about what's the tool that's going to best fit you and your family's needs. And there's so many different ways that we can use some of these tools. He's going to be going over protection, income protection, mortgage protection. And the reality is insurance protection is the Swiss Army knife of financial services. Most people don't understand that you can use life insurance to cover so many different areas of your life. And so I'm really excited to have him on tonight. And so, are you there, Manuel Soto? I don't see you. There you are. Okay, awesome. So yeah. CEO of the Financial Architects, Manny Soto, take it away.
All right, thank you so much. Carlos, you did a phenomenal job. I was taking copious notes as well. You even learned how to share your screen, bro.
Imagine that.
You're getting good at this. I don't know if you know this or not, you guys. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. We had this Zoom with Renee, one of my buddy's wives, and we're on a speaker call the day before. And we're like, man, I wish I could just show it in person and this, that, and the other. But, we're doing a lot of pivoting right now, and Carlos is doing phenomenal at that. He's always rolling with the punch. So if it's Blockbuster, he's trying to make it into Redbox. If it's Redbox, he's trying to make it into Netflix. If it's Netflix, he's trying to make it, on the moon somewhere. So I really appreciate him as a speaker. We got a lot of friendly faces on the call today. Jaime Rivas was my first boss when I was 18 years ago. And it's great to see him. Genevieve, I know that Terry Bowie is on the call. She runs our Orange office. The Financial Architects, we have 13 different office locations. Not that even matters nowadays that we're all indoors, but we have 13 different office locations, and 12 of them are here in Southern California. And Terry runs one of her brokerage shops out of Orange, California, and she's very successful there. She does a lot of tax planning, and she messaged me separately. Carlos said that you were pretty awesome. George Cardenas, he's a big real estate player out of the LA area. I'm just so grateful to have you guys on the call. I've noticed also that someone that chimes in every single week, Hugh McKee, I don't know the guy personally, but he chimes in every week, and I see him, paying attention. And then my new friend Terry's on the call. So I'm just so grateful to have all you guys here on this TFA Tuesday. Jay-Z, if you could do me a favor, not the rapper Jay-Z, but my assistant Jay-Z, if you could put my contact information in the chat bar so that everybody can get in contact with me if they need to. Another person that I do have zooming in is my buddy Daniel Shahada. Daniel, him and his family own a PNC shop, so they do homeowners, they do car insurance and stuff like that. And the reason why I wanted him here, just in case we do get a question that has to deal with homeowners insurance and things of that nature, because I'm a big planner. I like to be proactive versus reactive. And if you're wondering what the difference is, a proactive person would not have been stressed out 3 months ago when everything got shut down. A proactive person saves money. A proactive person has more insurance versus less insurance. A proactive person pays their taxes pretty consistently. Whereas a reactive person is like, oh man, I wonder what the government's gonna give us. Shoot, man, I'm stressed out a little bit. So as I get into the specifics of the information, I want everyone to know that, hey, I've been reactive before. I was 25 years old before. I had my son when I was 23, and I had my life insurance at that point because I thought, man, what if I passed away? Mijo's gonna need something. And I want to tell a short story behind that really quick. I've been doing this for about 17 years now. And as a lot of you guys already know, we own a registered investment advisory firm, something similar to a Merrill Lynch or a Putnam Investment Strategies, things of that nature. We own a registered investment advisory firm. So we do that. We own a Medicare insurance company where if you're over 65 and you need Medicare Part A, B, C, or D, we can help you out with that. And we also own an insurance company, a life insurance company. Guess what the biggest seller is right now? Life insurance. And the reason why is because life insurance has changed so massively in the past decade, it'll blow your mind. It used to be you have to die to use it. How hard of a sale is that? Me 17 years ago, that was a tough sale. I got to tell you guys, okay? You walk into a house and you say, hey, Bob, you got to die to use the plan. And Bob goes, hell no, they're going to have a freaking GoFundMe. Back then it was a car wash, but it wasn't cool at that point. I walked into a house, true story, about 14, 15 years ago, and I sit down with the husband and wife, and they're old school Latinos. And Jose was his name. And he put his hands in his trousers, like right below his belt to kind of create warmth. It was his habit. And he tells me, right when I'm done with my presentation, he tells me, he goes, ¿Pa qué? ¿Para su Sancho o qué? And if you don't speak Spanish, which I understand a lot of it, don't laugh at me, but that means like, for what? When I pass away, I'm giving the life insurance to my wife's new boyfriend or what? And I had to kind of pivot a little bit during that time. So I told him, I said, Jose, about it. If you had $500,000 worth of life insurance and you pass away, your wife doesn't need Sancho. She's got money. And he leaned back and he goes, that makes sense, mijo. And then boom, we did business. Nowadays, it's completely, I know we're talking about LLCs in protecting our home asset. Very important, yes? But even more so is protecting the payments in it. So when people go unemployed, that's a big, heavy challenge. When people have a heart attack, stroke, cancer, they go blind, they have an amputation. It's the blue elephant in the room where people go, I need that, but I'm afraid to even ask the specific question behind that. So I want to share my screen really quick, and I'm going to do it in my other deal that I'm logged into. So don't judge me. My desktop is amazing. So what separates us from the industry is, I'm waiting for it to share. There we go. What separates us from the industry is that we're a discount brokerage company, meaning this. Meaning if you walk into, I won't say any company names. Yeah, I will. If you walk into a Primerica or a New York Life, guess what they're selling you? That's right. They're selling you company product, where we have a ton of different insurance companies. You see the big Prudential sign here, get a piece of the rock. We got AIG, we have Pacific Life. They're centered out in Newport Beach, Fashion Island to be exact. Foresters, Anthem Blue Cross, Protective, you name it, we probably do business with them, okay? So it gives us an opportunity to give you a ton of discount inside of the chassis of the insurance. So there's two different types of life insurance, or I call income protection. There's term insurance, and then there's permanent insurance. Now I'm gonna grab a star from my bag of tricks here, and I'm gonna put a stamp right by term. You guys see that in the star right there? That's term, and then permanent. Now it has different specifics behind it. Term covers for a specific period of time. It'll be anywhere between 10 and 40 years nowadays. There's a 40-year term insurance policy out right now, ladies and gentlemen. It has a lower initial cost, no equity built up, but the premiums are pretty low. It's affordable, right? And of course, after the period of time it's done, it increases. The secondary type of insurance is permanent, very easy to understand. It's lifetime coverage. It has equity, cash value that grows. All of the returns are income tax free on distributions. And then it has a flexible premium, which is very important, okay? So I'm gonna go back to the body of the illustration to show you some more stuff. Hold up. Carlos is better than me in sharing the screen. All right. So in the next slide that I'm going to share with you, this is what makes it super different. And this is exactly what I wanted to share with you, how special the new insurance plans are. The old type of insurance is just that. It's old. So if it's the old type of insurance, you have to literally die to use it, unfortunately. In the new type, if you were to have a heart attack, stroke, or cancer, now as a result of that critical or chronic illness, you can still pay your bills if you had a term life insurance policy or a permanent life insurance policy. Now I'm going to grab another marker from my bag of tricks here, okay? So I'm gonna talk about some facts. You see the check box, or the check mark that I just made right there? A stroke occurs every 40 seconds in the United States. So put yourself in a business owner's shoes. You just took $250,000 out of the equity of your house. You just put it down on a new operation. You just signed a 10-year lease. Some of you signed a 3-year lease. Congratulations. And then you got to hire staff. Then you got to hire staff that takes from you sometimes. You got all these stresses, right? On top of that, to throw insult to injury, you have a stroke. Can you pay the bills anymore? No way. You're done. The business is now closed. Here's another fact. 6 out of 10 Americans live with at least one chronic illness. This is a major drawback, ladies and gentlemen. Number 3, it's estimated that 1.8 million new cases of cancer will be diagnosed in 2020. Now, again, I'm very proactive nowadays, not reactive. So when someone says, hey, you can get a life insurance policy that you don't have to die to use, I'm all ears. I go, give me the specifics. How much is it going to cost me? How much is the internal cost? What's the rate of return that I'm getting inside of that bucket? And then lastly, approximately 530,000 bankruptcies are filed annually because of medical debt. Bankruptcy, ladies and gentlemen. So I know that I have the special part of the presentation to depress everybody, but hey, it's again the blue elephant in the yourself, man, I don't know, can I afford something like that? I've gotten term insurance policies for $42 a month. Somebody gets coverage. Right now, we had 81 people maximum on this Zoom call. Just imagine how many people they know that have dependent children. Imagine how many people they know that have a business that needs some of this insurance coverage. Imagine how many people that are on the call that are saying to themselves, shoot, when I'm 76 years old, can I even afford a policy like this? What's better, getting the policy earlier when I'm younger or getting the policy later when it's more expensive and pricey? I've been in the 17 years, again, ladies and gentlemen, I've seen the guy walk in that's 52 years old. Now he's 69. Guess what he's talking about? He's not talking about, did I make another $1 million in my annuity? He's talking about, how can I pass on my family's money as income tax free as possible? And that's the primary reason why I've partnered with several CPAs, several tax advisors, several people in the nation like this, because again, there's proactive, then there's reactive. So these living benefits are brand new, ladies and gentlemen. They've been around for a little over a decade now, and more companies are jumping on the bandwagon. One underwriting specific that I will give you. Lots of people have a challenge with taking blood work. They don't want to take blood, urine, step on a scale, do blood pressure. There's certain companies that will insure you all the way up until $3 million with no exam. No exam. They have a different type of underwriting process. So when you talk about mortgage protection, pull out one last piece and then I'm done. When you talk about mortgage protection, this is normally like my buddy who's on the Zoom in right now. I'll wait until the flyer comes up. This is what the real estate professionals that I work with share with their clients. And again, the reason why they do that is not to make money. They do it because they genuinely care about their prospective clients. It's important to them. Let the chips fall where they may. Just give them the opportunity to say no. So in this home sweet home brochure that we give to the client, we talk about the different consequences. Yeah, you just bought a piece of property, but now you have a $580,000 mortgage on the property. How are you going to pay that off if, God forbid, you were to pass away? What's going to happen just in case you had a stroke or cancer or heart attack? Carl Lehman, you're not on mute. So these are very important questions to ask yourself when dealing with these types of subject matters. So I wanted to make it short to the point because I want to answer more of the questions that you guys might have. On that note, I want to explain one thing. Next week at our TFA Tuesdays, we're having an information analyst expert. He was on the Zoom right now, initially listening to Carlos, and he logged off, but his name is Logan. He's going to be coming up with, I'm going to ask him what the historical performance of the real estate market has been, what the historical performance of taxation has been, what the current unemployment rate has been, how it's going to be projected in the future. And then we're going to come up with some projections for all of you guys to think, shit, man, does that make sense? Damn, should I even, you know, we're going to ask these questions because if anyone knows me directly, you know that I'm not, oh man, let's go with the flow kind of guy. I'm a little bit controversial, but we're going to have some statistics for everyone to understand and take knowledge upon and think to themselves, damn, does it even make sense that I do X, Y, or Z on the investment side? So Natalie, you have any questions for me? You're muted, Nat.
I do. Okay. So, and if you touched on it just a little bit, but what if there's a situation where the client can't make the payment on their home? I know you talked about the different types of insurance.
It would really depend. It would really depend. Like, I talked to a guy today, one of my brokers, Ivan, he's on the Zoom right now. Ivan does real estate, mortgages. He's like a full service financial planner. He's got a life license, so he does it all. So he brought in a pretty high identity client, and he asked me to do the presentation and ask some fact-finding questions. Here's a guy that probably has a net worth of north of $3.5 million. He's young, somewhat young. He's 47 young years old, and he owns a pretty successful business. He's got 2 properties. He's got a family. He's never had life insurance. And I asked him, I go, okay, what's your outlet plan? He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, what's your exit strategy? He says, I never really thought about it, man. I'm just a hardworking dude. I've always worked 13, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. And that's the reason why I have what I have. And that's the reason why I'm talking to you. He's a great saver, by the way. But if he goes down with a heart attack, let's say, and it's a big one, it's a severe heart attack or stroke. Did you know that the government's going to force him to come out of pocket and liquidate a lot of his assets if he's north of a certain age? You know, that's a big danger nowadays. So would you rather pay an insurance cost, or would you rather go through some sort of challenge like that futuristically? So let's say it's a younger family and they're 28 years old and they're just getting their family going and they want to purchase a property in the near future. I would recommend a cheap term policy for $50 a month, save $300 a month, purchase a house, and then we can look at some other options later on down the road. But if they lose their job, they have financial cancer, because everybody should have at least 3 months to 4 months, nowadays 6 months, of their monthly bills saved up in a cash account, like a market account. So if I make $5,000 a month and I don't have $15,000 in my checking account or an interest-bearing checking account, or my bills are $3,000 and I don't have $9,000, you're playing Russian roulette, man. There's you're 1, 2, 3, 4 flat tires away from being on the street. So that's option 1. Option 2, if a person is a good saver and they have something like that, now they do need some type of chronic or critical illness life insurance inside of that insurance bubble. I think it's very important. Do they need a permanent or term? That's again based on their budget and based on. Recently had a new friend of mine. He's been reading a book called The Power of Zero, and in the book, it's written by CPA Carlos. So you'd be this dude's friend. So the author of the book is a CPA, and he did all this diligence on past tax ramifications and future tax ramifications, and he's sold out to the fact that taxes are rising. So what he says is that I'd rather have control over my taxes than no control over my taxes in the future. So that type of plan is a LIRP plan. As weird as that is to kind of describe, a life insurance retirement plan. It's called LIRP. Another derivative of that is infinite banking, where people are putting $2,000 a month into their life insurance policies, not because they need a life insurance policy. It's to, well, I hope there's no IRS auditors on here, but it's to avoid. Carlos, I'm with you, man. I hope nobody's on the line that's going to listen to it adversely, if you will. So if they have a heart attack, stroke, or cancer, or some disability like that, then they need some insurance to hedge the risk of that.
Awesome. I love it. There's always a solution, right? I love that. So another question, what would disqualify someone from being able to qualify for this type of program?
Good question. I can literally get anybody insured if they're over 50. So if you're over 50 and you have stage 3 cancer, I could get you insured. You got stage 4 cancer, I could get you insured. The only drawback would be if they're younger and they need life insurance, it would be somewhat challenging. But again, the biggest reason for someone to get it now, that it's more cost effective now. So DUIs, believe it or not, if you got 2 DUIs in an 8-year period, good freaking luck. You're a risk to the insurance company, and they do not have to insure your life and your disabilities. Good question.
Awesome. Any other questions that we have, guys? That's it. We're right at 8:03.
Can I add something on the homeownership side?
Of course.
Okay, cool. Okay, so a lot of us, I mean, what's the American dream besides owning a business? It's owning a piece of property, right? And in that scenario, I'm a big believer in not paying off your house. I know, weirdo, huh? It's your biggest tax deduction that you have. Carlos would agree with it. It's the biggest tax write-off that you have, even with the new laws in place. Number 2 is there's an acronym called LITR, L-I-T-R. If you guys want me to do a specific TFA Tuesday on why not to pay off your house, I can do that. L stands for liquidity. Your home is not liquid, contrary to what you think it is. So if there's a major earthquake, you really think the banks are going to come on the scene and go, let's offer you a HELOC based on your $300,000 worth of equity? They're probably closing the HELOCs down. So contrary to what a lot of people think, if you have equity in your house, it's not really liquid. I is interest rate. It's still the lowest interest rate environment possible right now. T is a major, the tax write-offs. And then R, which is the biggest factor in this acronym, R is risk. Guys, if you were in Louisiana during Hurricane Katrina and you paid off your house, you weren't too happy with your house. If you were in a big hurricane in Florida, you were not happy you paid off your house. You definitely won't be happy if you're in a big earthquake situation. I know it's never going to happen in California, but you're not going to be happy if that scenario happens. So again, hedging the risk behind that is super important. There's some of my clients that come into my office, they ask me about reverse mortgages. Majority of the time, I don't like them, but if it fits the bill, it fits the bill. Why again would you want to be paying off your house as soon as possible? So on the life insurance side, if you have a decent sized life insurance policy and you still have a payoff on your house, it's not a bad thing. Numbers don't lie. People do. That's it, I'm done.
Do we have time for one more question? With your little ditty at the end. So someone asked, does credit affect your insurability?
Good question. If the client goes with a different insurance company and the insurance company does underwriting with no exam, it may. So if you got a 580 FICO score and you can't buy a Hot Wheel, you may have a challenge. But fully medical, no. You can get preferred elite by going fully medical underwriting, and you could have terrible credit. So again, no such thing as a bad insurance company, just bad representatives. They're just not structuring it the right way for you.
Yeah, and I think you hit on that too when you talked about being the discount brokerage. Obviously, if you have different companies you can shop around, the more likelihood you have of being able to help that client and getting them insured. So Really great information tonight. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Manny. Thank you, everyone that attend. It's just been some really great nuggets. I know I learned a lot tonight, and so I'm excited about that as I'm growing my wealth, and I know everyone on the call is too. So just a reminder, we do have these every Tuesday, 7 p.m. I did drop the link in the chat box for you to join our TFA Money Talk Tuesday group on Facebook. You can go to Facebook, drop it in the search, and find us. We're constantly putting in great information, and again, having these for you, letting you know in advance what we're going to be talking about so that you can jump onto the ones that fit your situation. Obviously, we love referrals, so if you see anybody that would like to join the group, you have friends, family, or that need that information, please feel free to invite them. We really want to be able to help people, educate people. I mean, if you look at our school system, we are not educated in this area of our life, yet money is a tool that we use every single day. And so it's, it's very important for us that we're getting this information out there and making the biggest difference that we can to help families and to help each other. So we also have Spanish seminars on Thursdays and Fridays that are led by Marta Samano right over there in the corner. If you can see her, say hi, Marta. She's awesome businesswoman as well. So grateful for each and every one of you. Enjoy the rest of your night. We hope to see you at next week's TFA Money Talk Tuesday. And if not, hope to just get to know you better in our group. So thanks everyone, and have a great night.
I know you enjoyed the TFA Tuesday Zoom, so hopefully you'll smash that subscribe button.